welcome back everyone. Now people who live in Lahore or visit here frequently would be well aware of the torture that Kalma Chowk poses at the height of rush hour. It can take you up to 30 precious minutes to get out of this intersection to get to anywhere on either side of Firozpur Road. For years people have been complaining about it, and this year the Punjab government announced that it would begin construction on a flyover over Kalma Chowk that would effectively take care of the perpetual traffic jams. Now once again people complained that the construction activity itself would wreak havoc on the flow of traffic. You can't make people happy. Now enter Lahore Conservation Society and the debate takes on a new twist. Lahore Conservation Society and others filed an appeal through Advocate Rafay Alam challenging the construction of Kalma Chowk flyover, stating that the Lahore Development Authority had violated the Pakistan Environment Protection Act and the procurement rules, and the project at the moment has come to a halt pending a court judgment. Joining us this morning is Advocate Rafay Alam to explain us what is going on. Hello Rafay.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
So Rafay, what's happening with this Kalma Chowk and what's the issue here?
Well, just to clarify, the Conservation Society and Shajar Dost filed an appeal against the Chief Minister and the Communication and Works Department, not the LDA.
Oh, all right.
Yes,
Okay.
and we are
Sorry, I stand corrected.
The Conservation Society and Shajar Dost have challenged the project because they say that it hasn't been conducted in accordance with the law.
Okay.
Pakistan has an Environment Protection Act that protects our fundamental right to life, and very crucially, the Environment Protection Act mandates that any large project that is likely to cause adverse environment effect is subject to a public hearing.
Okay.
And it's a remarkably democratic bit of legislation that says that anyone being affected by a development project will have the right to participate in a public debate about the environment impacts of that project. And it's a means of involving local people who are going to be affected by development projects in the development process. But by not having a public hearing, as happened in this case, the people of the city of Lahore have been deprived of their fundamental right to participate in the development process.
So this decision to make the flyover was already made without consulting the people?
That is correct.
Okay, and had the people been involved? Now that is what I would like to, because you know, for people who are watching us now, the construction had started already and it was halted in the middle. So there's already a lot of commotion going on over there. What should have been done?
Well, you see, one of the things that the Conservation Society and Shajar Dost have argued is that the government of Punjab, in considering the flyover project, haven't brought into bear or haven't considered other crucially important factors, such as, for example, the very costly feasibility study done for an overground-underground mass transit project that was planned for Lahore. Now, this project was supposed to run on Firozpur Road and was going to have another underground line coming past the canal intersecting on Kalma Chowk. So the big question is, if the overpass is constructed, what will happen to this very important bit of mass transit that should be part of Lahore's transport solution as well?
So when you are saying mass transit, what exactly do you mean?
I'm talking about a subway system.
You're talking about a subway system.
Yes.
And you think that that will ever come into
Well, not
play?
if this overpass is built, because the overpass is being built at a place where 2 stations of that underground system were going to be located. So one of the arguments being put forward is that the government of Punjab may not have considered or should have considered this very important fact while making its decision about the overpass project. Because rapid mass transit is a crucial need for any large city like a city of Lahore with a population of nearly 10 million people. Do you know, by the way, there are less than 500,000 cars in the city of Lahore, which means all of the traffic of Lahore is actually produced by a very small minority of automobile users. And it remains a question to be answered whether the expenditure of such a large sum of money, it's nearly 3% of Punjab's development budget for this year, whether it should be spent on one road in one city of Lahore when Punjab has suffered devastating floods just last year. So it's also a question of how development priorities and the development process in Pakistan should be as well.
Okay, this is interesting, Rafay, because again, I'm clueless. I did not know about the mass transit system that would have come up anyway. Do you think the government was trying to, or is still trying to, build that flyover because they have absolutely no intention of ever going through the other project that they had in mind, like the mass transit?
Well, I don't want to say anything about the government, but I think it's crucially important to remember that transport and mobility are important fundamental rights. the right to be able to get from one place to another should be supported by government by giving us various options to exercise. So when I wake up in the morning, for example, and I want to get to work, I should have the option to walk, take a cycle, motorcycle, car, taxi, bus, underground, overground system, and even an escalator and elevator are forms of transport. But that doesn't happen here. When I get out of my house in the morning, because my work is so far away, because there are no sidewalks, because it's unsafe to ride a cycle, I'm forced to use a car. And thus my choices and my right to mobility is affected by the fact that there's no proper public transport and there's no alternative to private automobile transport in this city as well. So another argument is, very importantly, that the government of Punjab should consider the various transport options that are available and provide people these transport options, because it's an important function of their right of mobility.
Rafay, I must say it's very refreshing for me to meet somebody who actually believes that all these options should or could be provided here in Pakistan as well.
Well, you'd be surprised that in other parts of the world these options have been exercised in a remarkably short period of time. There are places like in South Africa, South America and India where public transport systems have been introduced in as little as 3 years' time. In South America, in Bogota, for example, the mayor of Bogota refused to build overpasses for cars and instead took the money and spent it on hundreds of kilometers of bicycle path that connected all the poor places in Bogota to all the libraries and public schools, thereby allowing people the right of mobility without sacrificing their safety in crossing roads.
So basically what you were saying is this is doable.
Absolutely.
And we've also seen it happen over the past couple of years, only a handful of years in Delhi.
Yes,
they
that's
have
correct.
really developed their transportation, their train subway system as well.
And also the bus system has been moved from diesel to CNG.
To CNG.
And that's improved the air quality in the city as well.
True. Okay, so what are exactly, okay, you spoke about the traffic problems, but what are the environmental problems? Because I was reading, about the trees being uprooted because of this construction and everything. Has that happened as well?
Well, I think the debate really has to move on beyond trees, because there's so few trees in the city of Lahore as it is. People have left no stone unturned in cutting these trees down. That it's difficult to defend a project or to criticize a project on the basis of trees. It's not about the trees.
Okay.
It's about the development choices that we're making. And we're making development choices that put a priority on automobile sprawl rather than the right of mobility, which is what we feel is crucially important.
Okay, another thing, Rafay, now, we have been obviously, because this has started, it affects almost everybody in Lahore at least, and people have been debating about it. They gave the example of the overpass that was built at Thokar Niaz Beg, and suddenly from what it used to be at one time, it was hell,
Well, listen,
going
I'm sorry,
there.
I have to correct you here because the overpass at Thokar Niaz Beg, and this is an example of any overpass infrastructure put in any large city, benefits only the people who use the overpass. If you ever look underneath what's happening at Thokar Niaz Beg or meet the people there, their lives have not been improved by this 2 billion rupee project. There's more traffic on Multan Road and going on to Raivan Road underneath that overpass than actually uses the overpass itself. Now, these are statistical numbers that we could
But wouldn't
debate.
that mean, okay, I am actually trying to understand, and I would, by your point, if I understood it properly, that still takes away some of the chunk of the traffic which has started using the overpass. Otherwise, they would have been stuck underneath as well.
You know, another thing that the government of Punjab didn't take into consideration when deciding the overpass, the Kalma Chowk overpass, were the preliminary findings of a transport survey that it itself is conducting right now. And the survey had its preliminary findings about 3 weeks ago, and there's some startling information. And I have to share this with you because it gives you a context within which we're working. The city of Lahore, with 10 million people, has less than 500,000 cars. 65% of the population of the city actually lives in less than 10% of its space in North Lahore.
Okay.
When you're talking about providing mobility to people, you've got to ask yourself who you're providing it for and for what purpose. The Thokar Niaz Beg overpass is essentially meant for people getting to the motorway or to Multan Road. And you've got to ask yourself, in a city of 10 million people with less than 500,000 car users, how many people are benefiting from the very expensive infrastructure that's being put there? I did a study recently and I came to the conclusion that excluding the Thokar Niaz Beg overpass, the Canal Road has seen some 6 billion rupees of overpass and underpass constructed on it in the last 15 years. And yet, despite the immense amount of money spent on the road, it hasn't improved the traffic quality. As a matter of fact, Firozpur Road, where Kalma Chowk stands now, was widened about 15 years ago by the same Chief Minister that sits today, and yet the road is totally congested. It is very, very clear to people and there's much literature about this and much science about this, that whenever you widen a road, you're only incentivizing more traffic to come to it.
More cars to
There
come
are many more ways of controlling congestion than just widening roads. And one of the most important things is to invest in public transport. The other thing is traffic management and regulation. All the debates we have about traffic assume, rather amusingly, that everyone in Lahore is a great driver. You know, if we were better drivers, there wouldn't be as many traffic problems as well. You've got to ask yourself how people get driving licenses. Also, you know, and I find it strange that there is no taxi service in Lahore. And this is interesting because if you compare prices, sugar costs 60 rupees, but you can park your car in the city of Lahore all day for no more than 10 rupees. Whereas it's the less than 500,000 people who have the money to buy cars and to use them who are being subsidized by parking. If you had, like anywhere else in the world, parking fees that were in the hundreds of rupees, you'd actually have a taxi service incentivized, because people wouldn't want to waste thousands of rupees parking their car on the side of the road. They'd much rather have a taxi service, which is a form of public transport. Again, so if you raise car prices or car parking prices, you have an alternative form of public transport. And there are hundreds of things that many other cities have tried, some have succeeded, some have failed, that have meant the improvement in the congestion and traffic circumstances of those cities, and have not involved investment that benefits only the automobile elite.
Okay, Rafay, again, coming back to this project at the Kalma Chowk once again, and I really want to know, because is it because people are not informed enough, not educated enough? What is the reason that people still feel that this is a good project? At least, you know, even in our own newspaper, we were, you know, you put up a story and then there are comments that can come down.
In the environmental activism world, this is called NIMBY, not in my backyard.
NIMBY.
NIMBY.
Okay. We are learning new things today.
A few years ago, I was in Delhi and I met the people who set up the Delhi rapid transit, the BRT, bus rapid transit system, over in the India Institute of Technology. And they pointed out that they had just installed this very expensive bit of bus transport, but it was being criticized roundly in the newspapers and on radio. Yet, during the Chief Minister's election for Delhi, the public transport issue did not come up once. And they said this was evidence that it is the automobile driving lobby, which is very articulate, which is very powerful, and has media representation, puts and comes to bear on certain issues where it is not the majority voice. More people in the city of Lahore walk to work. 40% of the people of Lahore walk to work and don't have access to automobiles. Yet the money that we're spending on roads deprives them even of sidewalks. So we've really got to ask ourselves basic democratic questions when it comes to the construction of things like this. And we can't just rely upon our own experience of last week being stuck in a 30-minute traffic jam. There are traffic jams everywhere in the world. You know, it's just a fact of life. And I think rich people who have cars should have to suffer those traffic jams until there is effective public transport for the majority of the people in Lahore.
What about those 40% of people who walk to work? Are they also as forceful as, you know, they voice their concern as you are?
Well, you know, this is, I don't think so. I think their voices are somewhat muted. They don't have the same media access as other segments of society do.
Okay, so what next with this? You know, I know that the construction, I mean, it's halfway through. How do we, any chance of going back on it, or what do you think is going to happen? Well,
there are also other ways of building overpasses. You know, one of the suggestions the Lahore Conservation Society has put forward is that it might not be necessary to build 2 bridges as are being done, and instead it might be possible to use a single beam construction that supports 6 lanes. And this would require much less material, would be much less costly, and would require less acquisition of land than the current project.
But then the flyover, I mean, that really, doesn't it kill the debate? The flyover would still be up there.
But it would be a cheaper, more technologically advanced flyover.
So
that would cost the people of Punjab less money.
So the problem is not creating a flyover. The problem, and I'm asking you, is to make it with, again, less funds or something like that? Because it will still create those lanes for all those cars, more cars and more traffic and more pollution in the end.
It's difficult. Look, let's not get into the debate about whether slow-moving traffic or fast-moving traffic causes pollution, because that's kind of like saying smoking light cigarettes is healthier for you.
No,
than smoking
I want to,
cigarettes.
but I do want to get into that debate of whether you want that flyover or not? Because it sounds like it's like going to be an in-between kind of an arrangement or an agreement.
Well, the matter's before the court, and I can't judge what the court is going to say. The best I can do is present our arguments.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Okay. In the meantime, I think I can just say that, you know, it's not, by the way, just to correct us, Rafay, has the work stopped for a while right now?
The court has directed that other than piling work, which is drilling down and making foundations for something, no further construction can continue unless the court has given permission for it.
Okay. All right. Interesting, interesting. Okay, I will tell you why Rafay is so passionate about what he is saying, because he also runs the critical mass, which advocates people, you know, that they should leave their cars and they should bicycle their way around the city.
That cycling is a viable alternative to using an automobile. It's certainly far less environmentally polluting. Driving a car or burning fossil fuels is the most polluting thing any one of us will do today, unless of course you own a tannery or a textile unit, which is also very polluting.
Oh, lovely. So we can, for this, because you are here and I want to take the opportunity to, you know, ask people to join in the critical mass. So the idea is, if you have a bike, you can actually try to get on it and go at least,
like,
you know.
So many other people in Lahore. You know, one of the strange things I get asked.
But Rafay, do you do that yourself?
Yes.
Like, where would you go?
I go to work on a cycle.
Okay.
And from there, many times I go to court on the cycle, because I find it easier. It's less traffic. I usually get there in 10 minutes. With traffic on the streets, it can take as much as half an hour to get to work.
And then obviously, then you would know very well through experience that there are no, you know, pavement sidewalks or even, you know, to cycle freely. So
but that's an argument to have more cycle space and to have more public transport, public walking space. If you look at the road width, for example, you look at the amount of space on a road that's dedicated to automobile transport and the amount of space dedicated on a road for motorcycles, cycles and pedestrians, you find it terribly undemocratic and unrepresentative, because most of the space is being dedicated for automobile use, which is less than 500,000 people in a city of 10 million. If you were to democratically allocate the space on a street, you'd have far more pavement space, far more cycle space and far more motorcycle space, and you'd restrict the amount of space for cars to just 1 or 2 lanes.
Rafay, I know for a fact that you are right, and this is how, I mean, people who have traveled the world would know that this is how civilized nations work. But when you fight your case, or at least you know, advocate or even put forth your point, are you the only one, or there are other people like you?
No, you know, we're not alone. Just last month, as a matter of fact, the Urban Forum was conducted here in Lahore under the auspices of the Urban Unit, and planners and architects and consultants from all over Pakistan merged, and there was it was heartening to see that there was a consensus of many opinions on how cities should be shaped. And I think, you know, Pakistan is going through a very unique phenomenon. In our youth, Pakistan was a rural society, and just in our lifetime, it's transformed and is becoming an urban society.
That's right.
And there are deeply profound changes that go through society when such a transformation happens. And it's issues like public transport which are coming to the fore. It's issues like living in cities that are coming to the fore that have never come before. And so these are new debates that Pakistani society have to face. And there is a consensus of opinion about how people should go about doing it. You know, there's a strong voice about introducing equity and democracy into urban planning. And I think that's a great, it's great to have many people.
And these shouldn't be just words. They should be, you know, led by example.
In the planning world, like I mentioned, you can actually make cities more democratic, physically democratic. Democracy doesn't involve just making votes or passing votes. Democracy can be reduced to actually what happens on the streets by making cities more accessible to people who don't have automobiles, making them healthier for people. And, you know, providing people a right to the city. This is an interesting political notion put forward by some Western academics, including David Harvey. And it suggests that people should be involved in how their cities grow.
Right.
If you look at how Pakistani cities get their money to grow, it's very stopgap. What's happened in Pakistan, because urban infrastructure projects are so expensive, that many times provincial and local governments have to look to foreign funding for infrastructure projects. And so what happens is, instead of having long-term planning goals, we have project-based development. इसके पैसे आ गए, ये project कर लिया, इसके पैसे आ गए, इसके ये कर लें. But as a result, the people of the cities get disconnected from the type of development that's going on. And many times the infrastructure projects that are being introduced have very little to do with the priorities that the people have, and have more to do with the funding imperatives that bring the money into the city.
True, true.
And so there's a growing awareness that there needs to be a right to the city that's articulated and enforced at some level. And maybe if political recognition were there for something like this, there would be ground to support a legal argument here as well.
Lovely. Rafay, I'm glad you are here, and for all the people who have, you know, some rightful ideas, but they think that they are in the minority and nobody would listen, well, take heed from Rafay, because you do find like-minded people.
There are plenty of like-minded people.
You voice your opinion, you talk loud, and there are so many platforms to do it from these days. Social networking sites is one as well, if you truly feel passionate about it. So we don't know what is going to happen with the Kalma Chowk, but I'm glad, Rafay, that you are actually voicing these concerns and making everybody aware of, you know, alternatives as well. Well, thank you very much for coming here. Thanks a lot.